What's so amazing is that it feels like when you went to Nigeria, what your experience was like, when I say it takes a village to raise someone, that community.
Yeah.
Do you think that community played a huge role in helping you to decide and change your direction and so on, like you're having that community around you? And if so, how do you think that can be replicated in the work you're doing now with the youth of today?
Yeah, I think there's something about the sort of positive role modeling. Like leadership in Nigeria, and especially in Yoruba culture, is essential. You have to have a position. You are allocated a position.
Yeah,
by design.
Respect is, everything is by
hierarchy.
when you came into this earth. Hierarchy. Very hierarchical, yeah.
and you kind of learn that the importance of that, really. I think there's something about how that creates a kind of ecosystem of support. And even if it's not just direct support, it's knowing your place and having to sort of quickly adjust yourself to that position instantly. Like 1 minute you're talking to somebody younger than you in a certain language, and the next minute elder will pass, the next minute you will drop down, and that person will drop down even further and give it's happening. And it is that kind of order, that sense of respect just really kind of grounds you. I think there's also a kind of spiritual side as well, which I remember more because there was something in stories which like told you things that were much more deeper and connected. And I remember once I first got my hair cut and I went to a barber about into the estate area, which is opposite from where we were staying. I came home, my auntie said, "Oh, your hair, where's your hair?" I said, "Oh, I just got my..." She literally dragged me and said, "You have to take me there." So you know what we had to do? She actually went to the barber shop, swept up the hair, and bring it home and brought it home. She said, "Never ever leave your hair with anybody." I said, "Why, ma?" She said, "Oh, you don't know what our people can do. If they get your hair, before you know, something is going to happen to you, and I can't allow that."
Yeah.
And you know, that kind of protection. So we're not just talking about them giving their homes, giving beds, giving the respect, but then that sort of guardianship of that your spirit.
Yeah.
You know, that was just too deep, man. And I just said to myself, "Whoa, auntie." My auntie Betty's, my Uncle Joe's passed, but she's still alive, and she's amazing. She taught me all the stories about juju and witchcraft and things like that. And they call me Ajala back home because I like to travel. I don't know if you remember one song called Ajala, we like to travel all over the world. It's a person. That song, my auntie calls me that because when I go, I can't stay in the house. I'll be there one day before I'm traveling here. So yeah, that kind of guardianship kind of creates that sense of, so you got a village, which is a physical place, but you also got the other bit around the spirituality, which kind of lets you connect, that you're connected to something much bigger than those that are immediately around you.
How can we take elements of that and try to recreate it with Voyage, which is the work that you're doing now?
I've always said most of our kids need to come back home. I think that's the kind of a missing thing in a lot of our kids. And I think finances have an awful lot to do with that. I think back in my day, flights and stuff there was that sort of calibration between your income, your ability to be able to do that. Whereas today it's kind of gone. It's so out of step. So parents, like even me, my children, I've taken all of my kids to our home in Ghana where I have my second home. And I wasn't able to continue that until when they all got to a certain age, over 7 and 8, because they was at 9 and 10 where they became more adult. It becomes really difficult, but almost impossible. And the importance of it for me was you get a sense of place, you get a sense of pride. And I think that's what I've always tried to do. And I think traveling there is one thing, but having a connection is more important. I've been trying to think about how we can connect it with our programs, and one of them is through an international development framework. I've always felt that we need to, but as the European funds have dried up, so that it can't happen anymore. They used to have a wild card.
Is that because of Brexit?
Yeah, because of Brexit, they've taken that out. And the wild card element of it would be you could apply to do an exchange between Croatia, Lithuania and London, and then you would choose a wild card country that could be brought in as a sort of fourth wheel. And that ran out, so that doesn't happen anymore.
You mentioned that you think the kids need to, like the young adults in your youth communities, in your projects and from Voyage and all the other youth communities out there, would benefit from going back home. When you went back home, you had connection because you had family. So you were very embraced. Do you think they will be able to be embraced like that? Is there a thing that can be set up so that they feel something similar to what you felt?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you're absolutely right, though. I am quite fortunate in a sense of that connection exists and is still there. And a lot of the kids that we work with come from kind of war-torn countries, for example. It could be parts of Africa which are really expensive. We know the DRC Congo situation, Sudan situation, also Mali and so on. I think the infrastructure in Africa is changing, but I think there is something about being connected to something that actually is the future. And that's what I didn't really understand until I got a bit older, that Africa is the future, is going to be the thing that every country needs to have a connection with. And I kind of sensed that early days, that everything's here, but actually, why is it all here in the West when it actually originates here?
You also mentioned the thing about identity. You said something along the lines of given that sense of pride and that sense of identity you got when you went over there. Do you think that's something that's lacking in our youth in the UK in general?
Yeah,
like the pride in your own identity.
Definitely. I felt like it helped with that sense of who you are, why you think the way you do, why you may even have slight alternative thoughts that are different from your other people and your peers. And I think having that connection with your ancestry can tell you things that you can't quite conceive about things when you're thinking about them practically, logically, or supposing comparing yourself with other people. It gives you a kind of new lens by which you can sort of be aware of yourselves. And I think that's kind of what it did. And I think you can't fathom that while it's happening. And I think this is just an older person talking about what must have happened. There's a sort of sense of passion and pride that you come from a place. Like, I know my middle name is Akinpelu. I knew what that stood for. My name stands for somebody with valor has walked into the room, which is kind of like a bit weird and long. But it's like, your dad names you for a reason, and there's a connection with that. When you get close to what that name means and you understand the cultural context of that, you kind of think, I've got to live by that. I've been one of these sort of people. I've never been scared to go anywhere in the world on my own and just forge that path wherever I felt I needed to go. And I think that sense of that spiritual connection and that understanding about your name and all those things have really empowered that journey. It's almost like I've got to be true to my name.
It's like a commitment that you've made to yourself. I think everything you've shared is a good example of when you are of dual heritage and you go back to your home country and find a connection. And I do think everything you've been saying, I've been thinking it's the same in the Indian culture when it comes to our names. And generally everything you talk about is very collectivist. People of the global majority are from collectivist cultures. And that's something that is lacking here in the UK because we are just so focused in an individualistic society that even though we come from collectivist cultures, we embody more of the individualism. And I think people in their formative years really struggle with their identity. And when it comes to the other side, not giving age out or whatever, but you do have a sense of appreciation of your culture. So I think it's a journey of discovery, but you don't realize the importance of it until, like, in hindsight, it's something that you discover. So I think if we could promote that with young adults to get them to understand that actually you don't have to pick and choose and you can consolidate your different identities in a way that's unique to you, then it can be really helpful.
100%. I mean, in small ways, like we named some of our projects, for example, like one of them, we named it Sankofa, for example. We tried to come up with concepts that kind of get kids questioning, what does this mean? Like, why did you get that name? What's the idea behind it? And you try and find kind of just fun ways to kind of get kids talking about the culture. So, for example, when they come in, we always ask, what's your name? No, what's your name? You know, that one. And they go, oh, no, I'm not telling you. And then you would tell them, oh, my name is this. And then all of a sudden they go, oh, okay, then. So you got one of them and all. Like, yeah. Because most of the kids think I'm like Caribbean or something. They will ask that. They'll be a bit shy. And look at my name. It's Paul Anderson. It's like I can be some white guy on the end of the phone. That's kind of been good. Just to flip it slightly. My mum is Estonian. My mum and dad met in the 60s because my mum migrated from Estonia to Australia. And because of that kind of journey, she became a Commonwealth citizen, and so did my dad through Nigeria, because Nigeria was a Commonwealth country as well. And in those days, the Commonwealth Institute used to facilitate gatherings of families, and that's how my mum and dad met. Equally, I've been to my mum's country several times, and I know family there too. And I think what I've taken from a lot of my experience in Africa is like knowing yourself in all the dimensions that exist only serve to just empower you and make you stronger.